You stayed late on Friday. You sent the update nobody asked you to send. You covered for your teammate when they went on vacation. You delivered the project on time, under budget, with zero escalations. And then the promotion cycle came around, and they gave it to someone else. And when you asked your manager why, they smiled that particular way managers smile and said it just wasn't the right timing. You went home that night. You replayed the conversation. You made a mental list of everything you had done over the past 12 months. Every late night, every covered shift, every time you said yes when you wanted to say no, and somewhere around 1 a.m., lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling. You did the one thing that guaranteed this will happen to you again. You believed them, which means they did not just deny you the promotion. They got to keep your loyalty too. Let me tell you what actually happened in that room. They were not evaluating the project. They were evaluating you. The way you carry yourself in meetings. The way you respond when someone pushes back. The way you talk about your own decisions. And they made a calculation about what you are worth. And here is the part that is going to be uncomfortable to hear. You have been teaching them exactly what to calculate every single week. It is a Tuesday, 4047 in the afternoon. Your manager sends you a Slack message, 3 words. Got a minute? You read it, and your stomach does that thing. You already know what it is about. Last week, you made a call on the Hartwell account without looping them in first. You pushed the delivery date back by 4 days because the brief changed and the timeline was no longer realistic. It was the right call. You knew it was the right call. But now they want to talk about it. And before you have even typed back, sure, heading over, your brain is already assembling the case. The brief changed on Wednesday. You have the email chain to prove it. The original timeline assumed a 3-day review window and legal came back in 5. You checked with 2 people on the team before you made the call. You actually saved the relationship by not overpromising. You have 6 reasons ready before you even stand up from your desk. Your chest is already tight. Your voice is already rehearsing. You walk in, you sit down, and before they have said a single critical word, before they have expressed a single concern, you hear yourself start explaining. So, I know the timeline shift looks reactive, but the brief changed on Wednesday. I actually have the email, and legal took 5 days instead of 3. And I checked with Marcus and Priya before I made the call, and honestly, I think if we had kept the original date, we would have overpromised to the client, and that would have been worse for the relationship long term. You lay it all out, clearly, professionally, reasonably, and your manager nods slowly. And you cannot tell if the nod means I understand or I am waiting for you to finish. And you keep going, because the nod was ambiguous and your nervous system needs resolution. Here is what just happened. You handed them a map of exactly where you feel exposed, because if you were fully confident in the call, you would not have needed 6 reasons. You would have needed 1 sentence, and they know that. They may not be able to articulate it. They may not even be consciously aware of it. But something in the room shifted the moment you started building your case. And the name of what shifted is called the approval-seeking loop. This is not a bad habit you developed at work. This is something much older. Think back further than work. Further than your first job. Further than your first boss. You are 9 years old. You are sitting in a classroom. The teacher calls your name, not to answer a question, to account for something. Maybe you were talking when you should not have been. Maybe your homework was wrong. Maybe someone said you did something you did not do, and the whole class goes quiet. 23 pairs of eyes turn toward you, not curious, waiting, and the teacher looks at you and says, "Can you explain yourself?" And your face goes hot. Because in that moment, you are no longer a kid. You are a defendant, and your brain does the only thing it knows how to do. It starts building the case, and your body learns something in that exact moment that it never unlearned. Explanation equals safety. I didn't mean to, she started it. I forgot. I was trying to help. You were 9. Building the case worked. That was the problem. The problem is, you are sitting in a conference room in a professional building in 2026, and your nervous system is still running that same code. When your manager says, "Can we talk about your decision on the Hartwell account?" your brain does not process that as a professional inquiry. It processes it as a threat, and it responds the only way it was ever trained to respond. Build the case. Prove the intent. Make them understand. And every time you do that, every single time, you're sending a signal that travels beneath the words, beneath the logic, beneath the email chain you pulled up as evidence. The signal says, "Your approval is required for my decision to be valid." Machiavelli wrote that men judge by appearances, not by merit, not by your output, not by your data, not by the email chain that proves you were right, by appearances. And the appearance that ends more careers than incompetence, more than bad luck, more than any amount of office politics. The appearance of someone who needs permission. There's a person in your office right now who started the same year as you, same title, same output, roughly the same ability, but they get pulled into strategy conversations you do not get invited to. Their ideas get implemented. Yours get circled back on. They get treated like a peer. You still get treated like a report. You have spent a long time wondering what the difference is. It is not talent. It is not politics. It is not who they know. It is that they stopped explaining themselves about 8 months ago, and you never did. So here is what you do instead. I am going to give you 5 techniques. Each one is a direct move you can use in the building where you work, with the specific manager you have, starting tomorrow. Not philosophy, not principles, exact words. The first technique is called the ownership statement, and it is the foundation. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. There is a critical difference between two things that look almost identical from the outside: justification and ownership. Justification says, "I did it because X, and I weighed Y, and I considered Z, and I hope that makes sense to you." Ownership says, "I made that call, here is where we are." Justification is a plea dressed up as an explanation. Ownership is a report from someone who does not require a verdict. Here is the exact scenario. Your manager sends that Slack. "Got a minute? You know what it is about." Old version. What most people do? You spend 40 minutes mentally rehearsing. By the time you sit down, you have preloaded 6 reasons, 2 contingency arguments, and a backup concession ready in case none of it lands. And before they have expressed a single concern, you are already explaining. "So I know the timeline shift looks reactive, but the brief changed on Wednesday, and legal took 5 days, and I checked with Marcus and Priya, and honestly, I think we actually saved the client relationship by..." You just handed them a scalpel and a map of exactly where to cut. Now they know what you are uncertain about. Now they know where the pressure points are. Now they know that you needed this to be okay with them. The ownership statement version. They say, "Wanted to talk about the Hartwell timeline." You say, "Sure. I pushed the date back 4 days. We are going to deliver. What is on your mind?" That is it. No defense, no over-explaining, no hint that this only counts if they bless it. Just, "I made a call. It will be handled. What do you need from me?" And notice the last 5 words. What is on your mind? You are asking the question now, which means you are holding the frame. The second technique is the future frame. Most people do not even realize they already lost the moment they start answering backwards. The past belongs to whoever questions it. The future belongs to whoever defines it. When someone challenges a past decision, they are standing on their own territory. They can circle it, they can probe it. The past is fixed and it cannot defend itself. But the future is open, and whoever frames the future controls the conversation. So when a conversation starts moving backwards, you redirect it forwards. Your manager, skeptical, "I am not sure this was the right approach with Hartwell." Most people, "I think it was, and here is why." The brief changed. The data suggested the client valued reliability over speed. I consulted with the team before deciding, so. You are now in a debate about the past. A debate you will lose, because they get to define what right means, and they can move the goalposts every time you get close. The second you start defending the past, you are standing on ground they control, the future frame. You say, noted. What does a win look like with Hartwell from here? That is it. You did not concede. You did not agree you were wrong. You did not apologize. You declined the invitation to fight over the past. And you redirected to a question that only makes sense to answer if both of you are pointed forward. Now they are answering your question. Now they are defining success on a project that you are steering. One sentence. The entire dynamic reversed. The third technique is the minimal acknowledgement. This is the one most people fail instantly, because the second the room gets tense, they rush to make everyone feel okay again. When someone challenges you, every instinct screams at you to respond, to say something, to fill the space, to demonstrate that you are engaged, that you care, that you are not stonewalling. Do not. Here is the technique. Your manager, after reviewing your proposal, I would have taken a different approach here. Most people, oh, what would you have done differently? Because I did consider a few other directions and I can explain why I landed here if that would be helpful. I just thought, given the context, that the minimal acknowledgement. You look at them, you hold the eye contact, you say understood, and then you wait. Silence under pressure is unsettling. Most people cannot hold it for long. When you stay silent after a challenge, you are forcing the other person to sit inside the tension they created. And most managers cannot hold that tension. They will speak again. They will soften it. I mean, it is not necessarily wrong. I just might have approached it differently. Or they will explain themselves to you. What I mean is that historically, we have found that clients in this sector tend to respond better too. When your manager starts explaining their position to you, the frame is flipped. You said one word and said nothing else. And now they are the one justifying their thinking. The fourth technique. This is the one I debated including, because when people hear it for the first time, their reaction is usually, that is too much. I cannot say that. And then they try it once, and they never go back. I call it the pattern interrupt. Here is the scenario. You are in a one-on-one. Your manager is pushing back hard. This is not a gentle question. This is them making clear they disagree, and there is real social pressure in the room to concede. The average person either folds immediately, you are right, I will revisit it, or they dig in and fight, which creates open conflict neither of them can afford. The pattern interrupt does neither. Do not jump in and save your decision for them. Make them say exactly what the problem is. They say, I do not understand why you would make this call without looping me in first. You say, no apology, no defensiveness, just a quiet, direct question. Help me understand what you would have done differently. 5 words. Not, I am sorry I did not loop you in. Not, here is why I made the call. Help me understand what you would have done differently. That question lowers the temperature, forces specificity, and keeps you out of the defendant's chair. Most managers either soften immediately or start explaining their preferred approach in detail, and the moment they are explaining, they are the one carrying the weight of the conversation. Not you. Use this when you feel the pressure to defend yourself too early. It sounds collaborative, but underneath, it quietly takes back the frame. The 5th technique is the calibrated agreement, and it is the most counterintuitive of all 5. Sometimes the most powerful move is to agree, not the agreement of defeat. Not, you are right, I am sorry, I will do better. The calibrated agreement, where you acknowledge the factual core of someone's challenge without accepting the identity they are trying to attach to it. The trap is that they are hitting you twice at once. Your manager, frustrated after finding errors in your deck. This is sloppy. This is not the standard I expect from you. Most people respond to both parts of that statement. The factual part, errors exist. And the judgment part, you are sloppy. You have fallen below standard. They defend against both simultaneously, and they lose both simultaneously. The data I was given had inconsistencies, and I was working against a Friday deadline, and this is actually above the standard of what we typically submit at this stage of the process. Now you sound defensive about being called sloppy, which means you sound like someone who is bothered by being called sloppy, which means a part of you suspects they might be right. The calibrated agreement. You are right. There are errors in this deck. I will have a clean version to you by 3 p.m. Notice what happened. You agreed with the fact. Errors exist. That is true. There is nothing to argue about. You completely ignored the judgment. Sloppy. Below standard. You treated it as if it had never been said, not because you are being passive-aggressive, but because it is not a factual claim. It is an emotional label, and emotional labels do not deserve oxygen. You close the loop with a specific, time-stamped resolution, and you stop talking. When you do that, when you agree with the fact and move to resolution without touching the insult, you do something that takes most people completely off guard. You look like the most confident person in the room, because only someone who is genuinely secure in their own competence can admit a mistake that cleanly. Insecure people fight every error to the death. Secure people say, noted, it is handled, and move on. And over 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. That is the reputation that changes everything. Not the reputation of someone who never makes mistakes. The reputation of someone who handles mistakes without drama, without defense, without needing the room to validate their self-worth. That reputation is its own form of authority, and it compounds. Now, I need to tell you something that will be harder to hear than any technique I gave you, because I have watched people learn everything in this video. They practice the ownership statement. They nail the future frame. They get the calibrated agreement right on the first try, and 6 months later, nothing has changed. Their manager still talks to them the same way. The promotions still go to someone else. The dynamic is identical. And they come back and say, the techniques did not work. But that is not what happened. What happened is this. They were using the right words with the wrong energy underneath them. And people can feel the difference, not analytically, at a level that is faster than thought and older than language. The same level you use when you walk into a room and know within 4 seconds whether someone in it is comfortable with themselves or not. You cannot fake that signal. You can only change it. Here is the question nobody asks. When your manager questions your judgment, what is the first thing you feel? Not what you think, not what you decide. What you feel in the body before the brain catches up. Most people, if they are honest, feel something close to shame. Not anger, not frustration. Shame. Shame. The specific shame of someone who is afraid the other person might be right, and that shame is the entire problem. Because the 5 techniques I gave you are designed to be used from a place of certainty. From a place of, I made this call, I stand behind it, I am open to information, but I am not open to a verdict. But if you walk into that room already doubting yourself, if the shame is already live before they say a word, every technique becomes a performance. And performances get seen through. The only permanent fix is not a better technique. It is the slow, uncomfortable work of actually trusting your own judgment. Not blindly, not arrogantly, but at the level where someone questioning your decision feels like information, not a threat to your standing as a person who belongs in that room. That is the work. And no video can do it for you. But here is what I know. The fact that you watched this far means you already sense that the old approach is not working. That is not a small thing. Most people never sense it. They spend 40 years explaining themselves to rooms that were never qualified to judge them, and they call it professionalism. Here is the second thing nobody tells you. The day you stop managing other people's perceptions of your decisions is the day you get those hours back. The mental overhead disappears. The rehearsing, the anticipating, the replaying conversations at 1 a.m. When you make the call, own it and let it stand. That energy comes back, and you finally get to spend it on what matters. Making better decisions. Here is what I want you to do this week. One thing. Concrete. Specific. Every time you feel the impulse to explain a decision before anyone asks, stop. Say what you did. Say what the outcome is. Stop talking. That is the whole challenge. You will feel the urge to add context, to soften it, to manage how they are receiving it before they have even formed a reaction. Let that urge sit there. Watch what changes. Watch how your manager responds when you stop providing the map of your uncertainties. Watch what happens in the room when you hold the silence instead of filling it. And watch. And this is the one that will stay with you. Watch how differently you walk out of those conversations when you stop needing them to go well. Because you were never trying to win the argument. You were trying to stop needing their verdict to know the value of your own judgment. There is a version of you that already knows this. That has always known this. That made the call on the Hartwell account and felt, for a split second before the doubt arrived, completely clear about it. That version does not explain, not because they are cold, not because they do not care, but because they understand something most people spend a whole career missing. The people asking you to justify yourself are not always looking for information. Sometimes they are just waiting to see how quickly you will step down from your own authority. And every time you rush to explain, every time you start building the case before they even challenge you, you make that decision for them. You already know what to do, not because I told you, because somewhere in you, you already know how humiliating it feels to keep asking for permission in rooms where you should not need it. Stop waiting. Make the call. Own it. That is all authority has ever been.